Welcome to Blue Pen Land here. Let's look at this question here, and you can identify these by the numbers up at the top there. So a tennis ball is hit at 15 meters per second at an angle of 50 degrees above the horizontal, right? So what you're going to do is, and then the question is whether it'll hit the ceiling, right? So this is a vertical question, but the first thing you want to do is you want to take that 15 meters per second, right, and figure out that vertical component of the velocity. So if this is 50 degrees, what's this side here? Figure out the vertical velocity, right? And then we really don't have to, they don't ask us how far over it hits the ceiling. We could, of course, do that, right, because you guys are so good at these. But all we have to do is the vertical suvat, right? And the question is, how high will it go? So if you make this 0, right, this is negative 9.81, you use that vertical velocity as your initial velocity positively, and then you're just going to suvat in the vertical direction for what that displacement is. Okay. Keep in mind that you're 1.5 meters off the floor, so if the displacement is larger than, what is that, 6.5 meters, then it'll hit the ceiling, and if it's less than that, it won't hit the ceiling, right? Notice that there's 3 marks here, so show all your steps. Maybe that's a mark there to find that side. Maybe it's a mark to use a kinematic equation. Maybe it's a mark to do the, okay, if it's 7 meters, well, 7 plus 1.5 is 8.5, so therefore it hits the ceiling, right? Okay, so, show your steps in there, right? And then, calculate the mean force, right? And let's assume, I guess, that we're not accelerating. Oh, that's interesting. Huh. Anyway, so to do this one, I was just thinking about like force of gravity or something like that, right? So they tell you this is milliseconds, so that is 23 times 10 to the minus 3 seconds, right? So that's 0.023 seconds. And then this is 5.8 times 10 to the minus 2 kilograms, or 0.058 kilograms, right? Okay. That's our mass. And so for the second step here, basically you can just use F equals ma, right? And then the acceleration you're going to get from change in velocity over time, or you can use v as u plus at, right? The initial velocity is 0, we assume, right? Notice that the velocity is 15 meters per second. So if you go 15 divided by that time, multiply by the mass, you should be good. You ought to get the force, right? And that's, I guess, assuming that you're accelerating it sideways. I'm looking at the mark scheme, and I'm trying to figure out if the mark scheme even addresses that. Yeah, I'm not really seeing it. Because I'm not really finding. The mark scheme's all messed up. Okay, here we go. Yeah, they don't worry about the force of gravity, so don't you worry about it, right? And then explain how Newton's third law applies when the racket hits the tennis ball. Remember, the tennis racket is hitting the ball, right? Here's the ball. Okay, the tennis racket exerts a force to the right. Talk about the directions of this, right? The ball is going to exert a force on the racket. It's an equal and opposite reaction. That's the third law, right? So obviously there's a force maybe to the right by the tennis racket, right? Actually, it's up at an angle, but let's not worry about that, right? And then what force does the ball exert? In which direction is it compared to this one, right? There's 2 marks there, so say a lot of stuff. All right.